Today I'm going to show you how we're going to start our coiled pots. You will begin first by gathering some supplies. You're going to need a Ziploc bag. You're going to store this in your Ziploc bag. So you're going to write your name and then your class code on the masking tape that is on here. And then you'll need one piece of newspaper, just one single layer. You're going to fold it in half twice so you get a pretty small square, just like this. And then you're going to need a container with some water. This is what we'll use to slip. Notice this is not all the way full. There's just a little bit at the bottom. You'll need a wooden stylus and some clay. The first thing you want to do when you get your clay is you're going to wedge it. When you wedge, you are basically pushing the clay down and pulling it up, pushing it down and pulling it up. We are trying to get rid of all the air pockets in the clay. If we have air pockets in our clay, that can cause things to break in the kiln. You want to do this about 20 to 30 times. Push it down and pull it up. Push down and pull up. Okay. Once you have your clay wedged, you're going to take about a half or a third of it. And the easiest way to break clay is to take your two hands next to each other and twist in opposite directions. And I'm going to get a kind of like a small orange-sized clump, and I want to make this into a ball. When I make this into the ball, you want to work to make sure you get rid of all the wrinkles and the cracks, because we're going to actually flatten this into what I call a pancake shape, and that's going to be the base, the bottom. You can roll it on the table if you would like to as well. That also works. But you want to have a nice round shape when you start, so that you'll get a round shape as the results. So now I'm going to tap this down with my hand. I'm trying to flatten it. Now I'm going to flip it over so that I do not make it stick to the table. You want to flatten it until you get to about the thickness of your pinky. Working to make sure that you are keeping it round as you do this, okay? So this is about the thickness that I would like to have. Now, this is going to be my bottom. So I'm going to write my name and my class code on this. You might want to write the year, 2015. And then I'm going to flip this over and it's going to go onto the newspaper. Now this will always stay on the newspaper until I'm done working with it. Next I'm going to take some more clay and I'm going to make a coil. When you make a coil, I like to start in my hands until it gets to the point where it is too big for me to work, and then I roll on the table. Now notice how I am starting down by my fingers and rolling up to the end of my hand, and I'm rolling the whole coil, and I'm going from one side to the other. Now this is a little bit rectangular, so what I'm doing is stopping it to make it a little more square so it will roll easier. Okay. While I'm rolling, I also want to work on getting it to about the thickness of my pinky. And this is about, I could go a little bit thinner. As I get thinner, notice how it gets longer. Okay. Then I'm going to use this as one of my layers. Now remember, part of our assignment is to make patterns with our clay. So I'm just going to do my first coil, my first layer as a solid coil. So I measured it out. And now to attach clay, I need to do what's called slipping and scoring. So I'm going to scratch up the coil where I want it to stick to the base. And then I'm also going to scratch where this coil is going on the base. And then, so this is the scratching part or the scoring part, then I need to do water. And the water is the slip. The water works like glue. If I use real glue with clay, it would burn up in the kiln. So the clay itself, this watery clay, it looks almost like chocolate milk, is what works like glue on the clay. Now I'm going to put moist side down to moist side, and I'm going to press it gently. I should see a little bit of water kind of coming out of the crack. Now notice how I had it the right size and now it's too long. That often happens when you slip and score because you're scratching and it stretches. So then I just broke it again. And if you look on the inside, you can see how there's kind of some watery clay oozing out. That tells me that I have a good seal. This is going to stick. We are not going to be smoothing these together. We want the pattern to show. So we have to make sure we do a very good job of slipping and scoring. And now I'm smoothing the edge, the end, so you can't hardly tell where the coil stopped and starts. Now my next layer needs to be a pattern. So for that, I can take my coil and I can break it into pieces and make it into shapes. I could do squares. So I'm just squishing this here a little bit. I could use squares like this. I could do circles. And I could leave spaces between them as well. So there's lots of options here, but you need to make shapes with your clay to create a pattern. You could leave some open spaces, or you could close them all in. And maybe I want to do a pattern with circles and squares. So I do a circle, square pattern. I could do that all the way around. Each of these little pieces, though, needs to be slipped and scored so that they will stay. The clay might stick while it's wet, but once it dries, it often does not. Okay. Now, I want to show you how we're going to clean up. Let's say I have these two pieces attached. It's cleanup time. I didn't have time to attach these other two pieces. So what I'm going to do is keep them there. I can even just set them on the piece itself. All this extra clay that I haven't made into pieces though, this will be put together in a big chunk and that will be returned to the bag on the counter. And then this is going to go into my Ziploc bag. I'm going to pick up the whole thing, newspaper and all, slide it all the way to the back, try to squeeze out as much water as possible, zip it closed, and I'm going to walk it over to the shelf for storage. Once this is cleaned up, I remove all the things off the table, wash the table, and finally, I wash my hands.